Okay, so I thought today would be a good day to talk about tip repairs because I have two knives here that need tip repairs out of this whole box that I have to do over here on the right. So let's talk about what is the generally accepted best way to do a tip repair. Now, I guarantee you, no matter what, because it always happens, no matter what you tell people, I guarantee at some point someone's going to come and say, oh, you're an idiot. That's not the way it's done. But I'm going to tell you, this is generally the accepted best method. And I'm going to tell you that, of course, there will be exceptions, or you're going to find someone that's going to say that's not the way to do it, or you should do it the other way. But here is what I believe is the generally best accepted method for repairing a broken tip, something like we see here. Now, this is a pretty severely broken tip. You should correct this from the spine side. So I'm just going to use this other knife to block off. We would want to grind from the spine side down and create a new tip that way. Now, does that mean you can never go this way and do it? It does not. And I'm going to tell you, there might be circumstances or reasons why you might correct the tip from the front of the knife instead of the spine side. But generally speaking, the most accepted method to correcting a broken tip would be to remove metal from your spine side down. Now, I will explain why. If we just simply look at this, okay, I'm showing you the part to the right is all that I would remove. This is the fattest part of our knife, our spine, going on an angle down to our apex. If we remove this, going down to a new apex and point, you'll see we have not messed with the geometry of this part of the knife. It will be properly thinned and ready to go, and we just need to sharpen it. If we do it the opposite way, and we were to remove this way from the left side, going up here, our new tip is going to be up here, and our new edge is going to be all in here. And what are we going to see? Well, quite obviously, it's going to be really fat and a lot thicker. And you've often heard me say about knives that sometimes you'll hear me say, well, this knife has a fat tip, or this knife has a fat heel and needs some more grinding. Well, one reason could be if someone corrected a broken tip and didn't properly thin the knife out, you can get it really fat up in here and you'll notice it. It could be fat and it just doesn't, when you're sharpening the whole knife, it just doesn't come out correctly. So you might have to thin that area. Now, why might you want to do it from the front? Well, simply, if a knife continually keeps breaking its tip, maybe it's too thin to begin with, so you might want to grind it towards the spine, into the spine side, and then maybe thin it a little bit and see if that stops the knife from repeatedly chipping and breaking its tip off. But generally speaking, the correct way is to grind from the spine side down and create your new tip. That will keep your geometry proper and you won't have to thin that knife a whole lot. Now, here is what I would consider possibly where you might do an exception to that, but you don't necessarily have to. So here we got a really bent tip, but if it's a really minor thing like this, you can often correct it from the front side. And many times a really small broken tip, just with regular sharpening, will correct itself from the metal being removed, and you won't even have to touch the spine side. So can it be corrected from the front? It can. The most proper accepted way to do it is from the spine side down. That is how we correct broken knife tips. And now I will go on and start showing you how we're going to correct these and what I'm going to use to do it. Okay, so let's talk about some other things that you might want for correcting a broken tip. Now, one thing I don't like to do is grab the 120 Cubitron belt that I'm using for sharpening. If I have to grind from a spine, I like to have, this is where I like to have some other belts. So as you guys know, my normal belt progression, 120 grit Cubitron, an A30 or 800 grit Trizact, an A15 and 1200 grit Trizact, and then I strop on leather. That's my normal progression for most Western knives. But if I have to do a repair, this is where I like more aggressive belts, and they're worth having because it's going to save your other sharpening belts and save you time. So this is a super aggressive, as you can see, 36 grit belt. This is a 60 grit belt. And what is it? This one's also a 120. So having some really aggressive other belts when it comes to knife corrections and reprofiling work is really nice, because if you have to grind all this spine area down with your 120 Cubitron, you're going to wear a lot of that out. Now, I'm not going to use this 36 grit. I'm going to go with this 60 to show you here. That should be plenty. That 36 is super aggressive. I don't think we need that, but I am going to go with this 60 grit just to start my corrections. So I'm working on my toolker here, but it doesn't matter if you are on a Harbor Freight. That can work for you too. Where I would do this on a Harbor Freight, especially, this is where I talk about the reversible motors are super important. So this is going up and away. If I had my belt on here, for me to grind away this part here, I would work up top here on my reprofiling of this knife. And that's how I would do it on my Harbor Freight. On my toolker here, I could do it down here at the bottom. I could do it up at the top. It's going edge leading right now, which is how I sharpen, but I could use it either way on this machine because it goes both directions. And as you can see, it's very open and gives me lots of room to get in here to make those corrections. Now, another good idea, if you're a new guy starting out, and even if you're not a new guy, I think it's a good idea just to kind of generally mark the profile out on your knife so you can kind of keep an eye on where you're removing, how you think you want it to be. You might go a little bit beyond this, but this is going to give you a good idea of what you want to remove. Another good idea that I keep around up here is a little dunk tank to stick the knife in if you feel it starts to get too hot. The good thing with Cubitron belts and really aggressive belts, they tend to not overheat very much. So I've refilled my little tank because it was pretty low. I haven't had to reprofile anything in a little bit, but now it is proper. And I'm just going to grab my mask so that I don't have to have the downdraft table on annoying us, and we'll get started here. So the one good thing also, by keeping my fingers here, I can start to feel if it starts to get hot. It's just now starting to get a little warm. So yeah, to be on the safe side, you can dunk it. You don't want it to get super hot and mess up any of the tempering of the knife. So there you can see we have our new profile started, and I'm going to do some more fine tuning to it, but I am done now with the most aggressive belt there. It never got hot at all. It was a little bit warm. I did do one complete stroke down the top because I do want my spine to match, but I'm going to be going at this now with some other grits as we get rid of this 36 grit and go to something much higher. Normally I get most of my sharpening belts come from Cliff Curry. I know those really aggressive ones there, they came from Red Label Abrasives, who are also great. I do like their really aggressive stuff. They're 36 grit. It's a lot of more of a knife making belts like that than necessarily knife sharpening. And this is their 120 version. It's not a Cubitron, but I believe it's a ceramic, just your basic ceramic. Okay, so I kept going there in the middle because I had a couple chips. This is pretty heavily chipped up, but we're looking good now. I like the profile. I took the bolster down a little bit. On this, it was a little bit high. And now I'm going to go just through my regular sharpening. So one belt I do like to use sometimes is a 200 grit Trizact, and I usually like to use that after I've been really aggressive. It's not one that's in my regular repertoire of sharpening, but this is when I do like to use it, is after having been really aggressive reprofiling something. So one place I get to be a little bit of a fanatic about is bolsters. I really hate when they just look terrible and people grind them all weird. I had a guy that used to sharpen around here, and all he would do is just go push it right into the belt and flatten this all out, but he would never thin it back down. I like to take the time to kind of thin it, round it off, and just make it look nice again. And then, as you guys know, I do a lot of polishing and stuff too. But I am generally very happy with this whole new profile now. And now I'm just going to go on to my normal rest of sharpening. So I'm done with my 200 Grit Trizact, and like I said, that I pull out when I'm doing a knife that I pretty much did a lot of reprofiling work on. Now, I'm doing all this on one machine today, even though I normally jump around, basically so we don't have to move the camera around. Alright, so here is my A30 belt. So this is about the equivalent of 800 grit. This is a Trizact belt. They go by A designations. $1,200 grit. Now I'm also going to touch the spine up with this, since we did grind it, and you can see how rough that spine looks. You can also do it up top. Sometimes I'll do it up here. Get any sharp edges off, or if I want to round that edge out a little bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna just go right to the machine next to it. Move the camera. Quick stropping. This is all done except a little bit of cleanup. Normally I do the cleanup first. I didn't today. Just be careful if you do your cleanup second not to dull the knife when you do it. This isn't going to get too crazy. I'm just going to do a quick touch up on my dental abrasive, but I will show you the finished knife here so you can see what it looks like. Alright, so let me just show you how much better that looks. And if you want to go even further, you can do the handle. I'll just show you a quick handle touch up how nice these come out. Especially I think this is an old Sabatier, it is. Old Sabatier. They have nice hard plastic handles and they polish up really, really nicely and pretty fast. Finally, a little plastic polish for the handle. there we go. So we got a nicely repolished handle. Let me get it in there a little better light here. Look at this. Look at the bolster. Looks great. Nice and shiny again. All cleaned out from under here. All that rust is gone. And we got a nice new edge. No longer a broken tip. This old Sabatier, which is pretty old. Yeah, even cleaning the handle a bit, you can now even read Sabatier on here again. The rivets are a little worn. This thing's been in the dishwasher clearly a few times, but in general, this is a fantastic knife, and it's gonna be great for her. And you can see it is razor sharp. So all done. Tip repaired and fully polished and restored and ready to go back.